The gift of trust me name is Margaret Hayes, and on the morning of my 73rd birthday, I woke up feeling grateful. The sun filtered through lace curtains in our bedroom, the same bedroom where Robert and I had shared 3 decades of what I believed was a beautiful marriage. I was a retired schoolteacher, still elegant at 73, with silver-streaked hair I wore in soft waves. Robert was 75, a former architect with kind eyes and gentle hands that had held mine through countless walks in the park. Our daughters, Patricia and Susan, both in their 40s now, had planned a lovely party at our home. Friends and neighbors would arrive at 2 o'clock. I spent the morning arranging flowers, humming old melodies, feeling blessed. 18 noon. Robert came to me with an unusual expression on his face, neither nervous nor happy, just resolved. Margaret, he said quietly, there's something I need to do before the party. Would you come to the living room? I have invited some special guests. I followed him, curious. In our living room stood a woman about my age, perhaps 68 or 70, with tired eyes and graying brown hair pulled back simply. Beside her were 2 people in their early 40s, a man and a woman, both with Robert's distinctive nose and jaw. My heart began to beat differently. Not faster, just differently. Robert's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. Margaret, this is Dorothy Chernhand. These are my children, Thomas and Rebecca. They're 42 and 40 years old. The room seemed to tilt gently. I sat down in my favorite armchair, the one by the window where I'd read thousands of books over the years. 30 years. I said softly, not as a question, but as a realization settling into my bones. Robert nodded. I met Dorothy at a conference in Chicago 2 years after we married. It was brief at first, just one weekend, but then it continued. She lived in another state. I traveled for work. I told myself it didn't diminish what we had, Margaret. I convinced myself I could love you both. Dorothy spoke then, her voice quiet and sad. I didn't know he was married at first. When I found out, I was already pregnant with Thomas. Robert said he would leave you, but months passed, then years. I stayed because I loved him, because my children deserved to know their father, even if it was only in pieces. Patricia and Susan had walked in during this confession. I could see them in the doorway, their faces frozen in shock and pain. My beautiful daughters, whose entire understanding of their father was crumbling. Thomas, Robert's son, cleared his throat. We grew up seeing Dad every few weeks. He'd tell us he had business trips. We celebrated birthdays late. We had Christmas in January. We learned to accept half of a father because half was better than nothing. Rebecca, his daughter, had tears on her cheeks. When Mom got sick last year, cancer, she made Dad promise to tell the truth before time ran out. She said everyone deserved to know the truth, especially you, Mrs. Hayes. I looked at my husband of 30 years, the man who had kissed me goodbye thousands of times before his business trips, the man who had slow danced with me in our kitchen, who had held our daughters when they were born, who had whispered that I was the love of his life. Why today? I asked simply, because Dorothy's treatment is almost finished. Thank God, Robert said, his voice breaking. Because our children, all 4 of them, deserve to not live in shadows anymore. And because you, Margaret, you deserve truth, even if it comes 30 years too late. The room was silent, except for the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner. I stood up slowly, my legs steady despite everything. I walked to my bedroom and returned carrying a small wrapped box, black paper with a gold ribbon. I had prepared it weeks ago. I knew, I said quietly. Everyone's eyes widened. Not everything. Not about Dorothy specifically. Not about Thomas and Rebecca. But I knew there was someone. Multiple someones over the years, I suspected. I found a receipt once, 15 years ago, for a necklace I never received. I found a card another time with handwriting that wasn't mine. I heard you on the phone late at night using a voice you never used with me. Soft and young and full of longing. Robert's face had gone pale. Margaret, why didn't you? Because I was afraid, I said honestly. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of disrupting Patricia and Susan's lives. I told myself that what I didn't know for certain couldn't hurt me. I chose comfort over truth. I handed him the box. But I'm 73 years old today, Robert, and I'm tired of being afraid. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a simple envelope containing divorce papers, already signed by me, and a letter. I had these prepared 2 months ago, I explained. I was waiting for the right moment. It seems you found it for me. I turned to Dorothy, and I saw her brace herself for anger. Instead, I took her hand. I am sorry you were put in an impossible position. I said genuinely. I am sorry you had to raise children alone most of the time, waiting for scraps of attention. That wasn't fair to you either. Then I looked at Thomas and Rebecca, these two people who were blameless in all of this. You deserved a father who was present and proud. I told them. I hope you find peace knowing the truth is finally out, finally. I turned to my daughters. Patricia was crying silently. Susan looked angry and lost. Your father is still your father, I said firmly. He made choices that hurt many people, but he also loved you genuinely. Both things are true. You'll need time to process this, and I'll be here for you. The party never happened. Guests were called and told I wasn't feeling well. By evening, everyone had left except Patricia and Susan, who insisted on staying. Robert moved out that week. The divorce was finalized quietly within 3 months. He split his time between my house, which became solely mine, and Dorothy's apartment across town. The remarkable thing wasn't the betrayal. Betrayals happen every day in countless homes, causing countless heartbreaks. The remarkable thing was what came after. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Dorothy called me. Would you like to have coffee? She asked hesitantly. I understand if you don't, but we met at a small CAF downtown. We talked for 3 hours. About art, about our children, about the different ways we both love the same flawed man, about how we'd both lost years to secrecy and shame. We met again the next month, and the month after. Patricia and Susan struggled with their father's revelation. Susan stopped speaking to him for almost a year. Patricia tried to maintain a relationship, but found herself unable to trust his words. Thomas and Rebecca, their half-siblings, reached out tentatively. There were awkward dinners and difficult conversations. Healing wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others, but slowly, something unexpected grew. Not a traditional family, but something real nonetheless. The 4 siblings began to form genuine bonds. Patricia and Rebecca discovered they both loved photography. Susan and Thomas found common ground in their shared passion for environmental causes. As for me, I discovered freedom. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see. I took a painting class and found I had some talent. I joined a book club and made friends who knew me as Margaret, not as Robert's wife. Dorothy and I became unlikely companions. We never became best friends. The wounds were too deep for that, but we developed a mutual respect and understanding. Robert lived with his regret. He tried to rebuild relationships with all 4 children, with varying degrees of success. He apologized to me many times. I accepted his apologies, but made clear that acceptance didn't mean reconciliation. On my 75th birthday, 2 years after that fateful day, I hosted a small dinner. Patricia, Susan, Thomas, and Rebecca were all there. Dorothy came too. Robert was invited but chose to give us space, which I appreciated. We raised glasses, and Patricia proposed a toast to MOM, who taught us that grace doesn't mean accepting betrayal, and that kindness doesn't mean sacrificing truth to finding strength we didn't know we had. I looked around the table at these 4 people who shared DNA but had been kept apart by secrets. At Dorothy, who had suffered in silence for decades, at my own reflection in the window, a woman who had finally chosen herself to new beginnings. I said simply, no matter when they come. The gift of truth had been wrapped in betrayal, but I had unwrapped it to find something valuable inside. My own voice, my own choices, my own life, finally fully mine, and that, I decided, was worth celebrating.